Hey friends, welcome to the Canyon Pathways podcast, where we invite you to live like a son and lead like a father. Canyon Pathways is a global community of men on the journey from the striving of servanthood to the freedom of sonship as we traverse the canyon that is midlife leadership. My name is Noel Boucher, and I'm the founder and part of the leadership team for this venture, and I'll be your guide throughout this podcast as we explore and discover what it means to live like a son so we can lead like a compassionate father. Glad you're here for this conversation episode where we're looking again at the concept of freedom, and a great conversation between Luke Smith, our community director, and Kostas, Canyon Pathways brother in Athens. And really excited to get to that here in just a minute. But just to recap our Field Note episode, which dropped just a bit earlier on freedom, we discovered three things as we looked at this word and the concept that it embodies. And one is the different ways we can approach freedom: positive liberty, negative freedom, positive freedom being the freedom to, negative freedom, freedom from, and how we get trapped in midlife leadership, really just sin and death operating. We are fixated on freedom from. Every boundary, every seeming constraint is something that we just need to eradicate to experience true freedom. Freedom's always on the opposite side of that thing being overcome or eliminated. Negative freedom. But we learned as we get into living like a son, as we experience the freedom, it's a positive freedom, the freedom to, really the freedom we existed in at the beginning when we were created in the garden. Freedom to. And there is no error. There are no boundaries or constraints. There is perfect relationship, perfect freedom within the appropriate boundaries of who we are as an embodied being, as a created being who bears an image, who is filled with a spirit of liberty. But as we grow in this journey into sonship, we begin to see that this positive freedom, this freedom too, is what fills us, what surrounds us, and what is on offer being given to us. It's what the elder sibling in Luke 15 wanted so desperately, but was locked into a negative freedom. I've been grinding, I've been working, I've been holding it all together, I've been doing what I'm supposed to do, not doing what I'm not supposed to do, and now I'm exhausted and angry. And the invitation was, my son, everything I have is yours. Come in and celebrate. You have the freedom to pause, rest, and enter into my presence. So, positive freedom. Second, in the Field Note, we discovered this relationship between the English words freedom and friendship. They share the same root and perhaps convey the idea that when we have friends, when we are surrounded by community, we experience true freedom. That is a necessary element of freedom is friendship. And perhaps that's why this one who came to set us free said just before he was betrayed and crucified, I no longer call you servants, I call you friends. You're free. And then thirdly, the ancient root of this word freedom, our English word freedom, actually meant beloved. And that sums up just about everything about sonship, moving to this place where we can rest and receive the reality that there is a Father who is a creator and redeemer looking down on us and saying, you are my beloved son. Just as he did with the first son, who was the first among many sons, you are my beloved. And we begin to be able to receive that fully, and it has a transformative effect on our life. So there's some of the findings in our Field Note episode. Let's jump into the conversation right now with Luke and Kostas. Hey, welcome to the community side of the Canyon Pathways podcast, where we're learning to live like sons so we can lead like fathers, one word at a time and one son at a time. And so my name's Luke, and I'm here today with my brother Kostas, and we're exploring Noel's Field Note on freedom. Kostas, welcome to the show today.
Nice to see you, Luke. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I love that you're here. I want to welcome all our community guys and say, join us on this journey into freedom. And if you haven't had a chance, I encourage you to go back and look at today's Field Note. Noel did such a great job on this word freedom. And man,
when I think about living like a son, this is a huge, huge word for me, and I know for many of you, maybe it's something that it has been a hard thing to grab onto. It's something that's eluded you, and today we're going to go deep into this and what it means, not just to be somebody that's in captivity or out of captivity. It's so much bigger than that. It's actually, this revelation that we have a Father that dearly loves us. I have friends, and if you're in the Canyon community, we want you to know that those are truths for you today. Today, we get to explore that with our good friend from Athens, Greece, Kostas V. Kostas is owner and operator at Dry Bones Cafe, serving up delicious coffee and conversations. And I got to meet Kostas in Ahina, an island about an hour's ferry ride from Athens. And my introduction to Kostas was kind of crazy because I had, I well, it's changed my life because that first time I met him, I brought my pink suitcase and it got lost and I ended up with nothing. And Kostas, on his motorcycle, retrieved my suitcase, drove it all the way to me in Ahina, and he got there. I don't know how he even managed to do it, but he got there and he just had a smile on his face and he brought me my stuff. And I said, I love this guy. Yeah, so you came in, and that day I didn't realize it because you had all smiles, but you were also, even while on that motorbike, bearing pain. Your back was jacked up,
Yeah, yeah.
and yet you came in smiling, serving, ready to go. And obviously, Noel presents a word for us that first night. Tell me about your first experience, King Pathways Retreat. First impressions of the retreat, first impressions of your word.
So, my first impression, I was I was in a really bad pain of my back, and there was only specific moves that I could do so I won't have pain. Driving the motorbike, it wasn't too much of a problem, but walking it was more difficult for me, or even sitting on a couch, it was more difficult for me. So, and I think that was, I was probably very tired from everything that was happening in life at that moment. My body was already too uh, um, tired. So I was looking i- to find in Egina, in the island, I was trying to find some rest, some physical rest, you know. So a brother had suggested that, Canyon Pathways retreat. Uh, I have told him, man, I want to uh, get involved with more men in midlife or any age. I don't care, and just share life with them, share God, share experiences. Um, but also because I was very tired, I think he suggested Egina is a great idea. And actually, when I got there, that was one of the first things. I think Noel said one of the first things he said. He was like, "Here you're gonna rest. You're here so you can rest. You're gonna eat, you're gonna drink, you're gonna sleep, and that's it. You don't need to do anything else." And it was exactly that, right? It was 100% that. I slept well, even with the pain. Had really good food, um, and very nice fellowship, right? And during the weekend, the pain of the back just start leaving. At the end, almost at the end of the weekend, start leaving the pain of my back, and because we prayed a lot about it, and that left me also a couple of days later. And so my first impression was not just positive, but literally it was a cultural change, that we can do that. We can rest. We forget that we can rest sometimes. If you ask people that they know me, they'll tell you he works 15, 16 hours every day, just going, just, and I do it, I never get sick. Um, so for me to pause everything, right? And just say, okay, I'm gonna follow that. I'm gonna rest because my body won't follow anymore, you know? So I found that rest there, but it wasn't only physical rest. Being together with other brothers that they were coming probably for the same reason or different reasons, I found also spiritual rest in a way that uh, I calmed down more in my spirit, you know? God's peace was more involved now into my spirit. And I came to that retreat. Uh, I didn't know that we're going to have some words, right? And so my word was bound. Okay, bound. And I was trying to think, what is bound? It can mean so many different things. The very first thing that came to my mind, it was basketball, out of bounds or rebound, or I like basketball. So that was the first impression that I have. And I said, how this can be translated or make sense into my life, what that could be. I was hoping for an easier word like, inspire or, change or, but bound. And then I was, while we were praying and thinking, and I was praying on my own and just, through resting in that retreat, you get to work with your brain more for more important things, right? And then your spirit takes over also. And then you try to discover more, So bound for me at that moment and that on that first Canyon Pathways retreat in Egina, for me, it was more like I am bound, first of all, in my body, and I am bound to time. So I had to find a way to change that. And I think that word that Noel gave me, it helped me to go deeper and understand it better so I can change more my identity, where the core of everything is. So yeah, that's my first impression for the word and for the retreat.
That's beautiful, Kostas, and I know that for many of us, in real time, a word takes on new life. And but when I hear that word, when you say that word bound, I know in my life I've been bound in many different levels and in many different ways. And Noel started off in that field of talking about how freedom, just at its basic sense, meant one who is not captive. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. So if I was captive, I would be a slave. And obviously the whole New Testament's filled with that concept of if you're under sin, you're a slave, and it was something that a lot of the ancient world could understand really easily. And then there's this idea though that Christ has come to set us free. And Noel said it's not just about being out of captivity. It was about something more. He's hearkening back to the garden and saying this: in the original garden, it wasn't just that they had the freedom to choose whatever they wanted, but they also had fellowship with God, and that freedom was about a relationship, unhindered relationship with the living God, where there was intimacy and that beauty that ultimately he said in its furthest roots meant something like this, that freedom meant knowing that you're beloved. And I'm like, this is a crazy journey. From not just being a slave, but this is really freedom really is about sonship. And it is about being children of God. But you know, our spiritual development often is running parallel with our natural development. And let's go back in your life, Kostas, and tell me, what did freedom and being bound mean in your life as you just began this journey of little Kostas? Living your life. Tell me about, who were you? Where was Jesus in your life? And what were some of those milestones along the way where you realized, whoa, I'm bound to some things? Give me some thoughts on that. When you started to maybe even ponder the idea of a need for freedom.
Hmm. Well, look, I grew up in a, let's say, if anything is normal in this life, in a normal family. Okay. So I was growing, having almost everything I wanted, not in a bad way, like I need this, give me that, and my parents would take it, but never had something that I would miss. If there was necessary to have something, I would get it. Okay, so we weren't poor, we weren't rich. It was a normal family. When I was 15 years old, I was let's say different. As I was growing, I was playing basketball, and that was the only thing that I really loved to do, and basketball was everything for me. So there was a time when I was 15 years old. That's 1997, and I had a very good chance to play to a very good team. Okay, and my father got me to this team. I trained with them, and they said, "Yes, we want him. We really want him." And then my mom said, "No, he's not gonna play. You're not gonna play basketball." I said, "Mom, please, I need to play basketball. I love it, and this is my favorite team. I need to play there." Says, "No, no, you need to study more because you're not going very well in school, stuff like that." So that was probably the first time that I really felt bounded. I couldn't choose what I wanted. I couldn't choose what I thought that I need at that moment. I was stuck somewhere. I couldn't leave. I couldn't escape, right? Like someone was stealing my freedom, right? And that someone wasn't a bad person, wasn't an enemy. It was my mom, right? So that caused a lot of hard feelings for my mom for several years until I reconciled uh, with her intentions, you know. So that was probably the first time that I really felt bounded. Now the problem was that because I didn't play to that team, I played to a very smaller team in my hometown, or close to hometown, whatever. But in a smaller club, a really small club, and I broke my leg during that year. So breaking my leg, just I think it started for the first time. I started experiencing depression, and experiencing that depression, then I had to express it somehow. So I started using drugs. I started a little bit of alcohol, and I was only 15 and a half, not even 16 yet. And that continued for several years until I was 22 years old. And I can tell that this is another way that I got bound. I was bound in something else again. My physical body was bound, and also my spiritual self wasn't free. So if your body is really bound and your spirit is not stronger than your body, then your spirit goes down also. So that's how I understand life a little bit. So yeah, so I was bounded for several years in that point. Now through that, I was bound in selfishness. I was bound in jealousy. I was stuck with how you say it when someone is proud. So those 7 years of my life, between 15 and 22, just caused many issues in my emotional self, in my heart, in my mind, in my brain, in my spirit. And I was so bound, I didn't know that I was bound, you know?
Yeah,
That's the beginning of my story as I remember it, and as,
that's that's good, Kostas. I mean, we're seeing kind of the little peaks and valleys going on in your life. What I want to know then, in the midst of that, who are some of the voices that were speaking to you in that? Because obviously, when you're 15, you break your leg, and you've heard you've had these disappointments. it's not just the natural idea. Okay, I'm gonna go do drugs. Okay, I'm gonna go drink.
Yeah.
There's thoughts coming in your head there. Was there, between this 15 and 22, who were the voices that were speaking into your life? Was there any that started to provide an alternative solution that said, you know what, you don't need to look here. You can look to the author of freedom, Jesus.
Yep.
Tell me about the voices.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I broke 2 times my leg. The first time was when I was 15, and the second was 17. Um, one of these times, a guy asked me to play for his team, right? His name is George, and he's a Christian guy. Um, he's an amazing guy, not just a Christian guy. He's a he's probably the best servant that I know. Okay, his spirit, his servant spirit. I haven't seen something bigger than that. So this guy, and that time I didn't know that, right? But this time, this guy says to me, "Would you like to play for us?" I didn't have any other future in any other team or anything, so I said, "Yeah, why not?" There were some friends that I had met in youth camps, in different youth camps that I've been. So he presented the idea really nice, and I felt nice, you know. So I go to play for him, and the first thing he does, I probably was the very first day I went to that field, to that playground. He had his car outside of the playground, and I was like 16 years old. And he says to me, "Do you know how to drive?" I said, "Yes, sure." Now, I didn't lie. I knew how to drive, but I had driven in my life very, very little, very, very little. And my father wouldn't trust me with his car, right? So he says to me, "Take the keys, and could you drive the car behind the house under the tree?" It was the first time ever in my life that someone trusted me 100%. Like, "Do you know how to drive?" "Yes." "Okay, take it." I mean, not second thoughts, not anything. I never forgot that, because that showed me this guy is free from stuff, free from material. Okay, I didn't understand that at that moment, but what I felt was, oh, he sees me. He trusts me, you know? It's fine. So, yeah, and I drove the car, I took it back there, everything cool, all good, yeah. This guy stayed in my life for many years, and he's still in my life, um, with some ups and downs from my end. That I, but he was always a role model for me. Okay, that's one person. Second person I met, it was later, after I was 22 years old. Um, I think it's 2004, and I meet a guy from Australia. His name is Marty Hoods. A crazy guy, crazy spirit, amazing. His spirit is so gentle, and at the same time so open to reach others, to talk to others, to make them feel that they are home. You know. So when I met this guy, it was an explosion. Also, my spirit started struggling with what I already knew at that moment, and my spirit was trying to grow also next to him. He lived in Greece for a while, but then after he left, we lost contact for a little bit, and then we talked again. And for me, it was a very hard time between 2010 to 2012. It was really hard times for me. So yeah, that's those two people, George and Marty, for me even today are the people that I look up, I trust in anything, and they know everything for me. And I needed that so I can be free. Today I'm 43, right? But I know these guys for 20, 25 years, and I've been through valleys and highs and mountains, and now I understand why God put them next to me.
Yeah. Well, Kostas, every man in Cain, and if you're sitting out here, guys, and you're feeling alone, you need to know that that is a picture of being bound, of being captive when you're just stuck in isolation, lonerism. But it's normal in midlife leadership that guys get trapped there. They don't know what to do to build relationships. Where do I go? We know that that's under threat. And so if you can relate to, maybe you got one voice or two voices that you can point back to, then we can thank God for that. But Canyon does want to be a place where you have opportunity to get more voices pointing you to Jesus. The simple concept, we're one beggar trying to show other beggars where to find bread. Beautiful picture. But Kostas, I know that in your journey, you know, that's two voices. You had all kinds of other voices that maybe
Oh
weren't
yeah.
pointing you to Jesus. And I know in the midst of those formative years, a lot of guys can relate to this in their growing up process. They enter into the military. They go into something structured, something to build up. That was part of your journey. Tell us about, what did you experience in the military, in the growing up, freedom, being bound, or what was life like that stage of your life?
So just a month before I need to go to the military, um, my friend dies. He's 19. He's already in the military and he's out on some days off. And they were planning to go to a party one night, and he asked me to go with them. And I said, "Man, I'm very tired from practice. I was playing again basketball. I'm tired from practice, man, and I'll see you tomorrow sometime." Because I had to go to practice at night, finish around 11, and then in the morning I was a volunteer firefighter, so I had to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning, right? So my friend went to the party, and when he was coming back, he crashed on a tree. Him and my other friend, George and Dimitris, those two guys just died there. And that was a shock for me. And in the morning, when I went to the fire department, I met the guys who took them out of the car. That was the change of the shift. So month later, I have to go to the military, right? And I've already lost my good friend, child friend. We were, grew up together, and I also had a girlfriend, being outside, and when I went to the army after 40 days, we just broke up. So I have the death of my friend, and we broke up with my girlfriend at that moment, at that time. So, and of course, in my heart, even without these two things, I'm already a person who doesn't want to go to the army. I just don't want to be there. One of the very first things I said to a guy when I met him, I think it was a lieutenant or even higher, something. He was something. And I said to him, "You are all stupid in here." That's what I said to him. I looked him in the eye and said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "You are stupid. Nothing's wrong with me. Everything is wrong with you." So I was so angry. I was so, I think depression had getting bigger and bigger. And it was literally a very big challenge for myself, to be in there and not harm myself. And I was trying really hard not to harm others. I used to believe in God in a different way, right? So I would think that if someone curses Mary, Jesus' mother, he needs to be punished, so I would punish him. I would punch him, or I would pull a knife, or, because that's not right, so I would try to find my own justice in the whole situation. Yeah, so being in the army, the first month was really bad, really awful. A couple of months later, I started being a little bit better because I had things to think. Like, I had to learn how to shoot with this gun and how to shoot with this gun. And, I was in the anti-aircraft unit. So I was responsible for a team of people leading to a weapon that would shoot down uh, um, aircrafts. So that for 2 or 3 months, that kept me busy. Okay, so I was good. But after that, it just army is such boring place. Okay, it's a boring place. If you don't have anything else to learn, it's just a boring place. And what happens to there is a Greek saying that says, if you don't work, if you don't do something like work, then mean is coming out. You know, the actual translation is the mother of being mean is when you don't work or something like that, or not being creative. So that's what was happening in my mind and in myself in there. So I was getting lower and lower in spirit, physically, in body, anything, you name it. My brain, my mind, everything worked in a bad way. I started having only bad thoughts. It was bad. It was bad. And I would have glimpses of people, just a couple of, messages on the phone, from friends and stuff. But the reality was I was there in the island. I was in an island for the whole time. So it's there in the island. I cannot do anything. I'll be there forever, and depression more and more and more. And through that, I would have friends there that we would go out, have fun, drink a lot, and come back. But then whenever I was sober again, everything was bad. Everything was not the way I wanted to be,
So this is a great picture because a lot of guys can relate to this. You had a normal family system, normal disappointments with parents, normal setbacks with life, and everything's normal. But there's little kid depression to bigger kid depression to now you've got your best friend killed, your girlfriend is broke up with you, you're in a place you don't want to be, and you're feeling what? Not just the sadness, now it's coming out, and also anger and rage, and you're feeling those things starting to manifest. I think a lot of guys can relate to that. In the midst of all of that stuff, can you look back now and see how God was working?
Yeah. Well, one thing is that there in the same island, there was a person, a friend that I had, and she's a Christian, and God used her a couple of times with her words just to bring me back to my mind, to myself, you know, not to set me free, but, just bring me, hold me a little bit back. So there would be times that I would call her like an angel, like she was like an angel for me. She was just a very legit friend. And the time she talked to me, she talked the truth, nothing less, nothing more. And I believe God put her in that time, in that island, just for that purpose. Now, there is a couple of things that happened during my time in the army that it was later on I could see why God allowed to happen. So when I was in the army, I would use some drugs, right? And one day they caught me, and it was a difficult situation for me, So I had to go to a special court for the army. It's not just any court. Anyway, that happened a couple of years later, from that. But that time also, they caught me with the drugs, and that even made everything worse, And my parents find out, and it was crazy. I was embarrassed. I was more angry, but God allowed that to happen there and that way. So He will show His power. So now I can tell that several things that happened in my heart and in my life there. I'm not going to say that God made it. He allowed me to do some things because He could get the glory later for that, if I can tell that, if I can say that.
Yes.
But most important, I think, is that God allowed me to be free in my mind and with my choices, but holding me not to die, not to kill, not something that would completely change everything in my life.
Wow.
At least he did that for me, because I know I was capable for both of that.
Well, that's, and Noel mentioned the idea that God will let us, he loves us enough and he values freedom so much, he will let us literally be free to make destructive choices that lead us into bondage, that then we have to actually seek freedom from things. And in that seeking freedom from things, he describes it, so well. But I picture that, for me, I always picture Israel in Egypt and hitting that point where it says, their cries have reached me. The cry and the longing for freedom. And it feels like for
Yes.
all of us, we're on a journey where
Mm.
God allows us to get to that place. We're bound up enough and we want to be free from stuff enough that we begin to cry out. You get to that point, you're stepping out of the army, you still got a court case waiting for you. So tell me, how does God work in your life in this moment from stepping out of the army to getting to that court case? Where do you see God show up, man?
Mm. Ah. So I come out from the army, and one of the first things I do is I go back with my girlfriend that we broke up when I went into the army. Very smart, very wise. So that I loved her. That's the truth in that. And she had shown so much patience with my ego, with my selfishness. She was a good person. Yeah, so I go out with her. I mean, we are together again, and what is happening is just doing our lives. Just I drink a lot of tequila, and using some drugs. Still, she's not in that, but I am. And well, normally what we would do every Saturday night, we would go out to a bar, we would drink, and then we go back normally to my house and just sleep. And we wake up late Sunday afternoon. Now, there was one Sunday, 12th of October 2003, that after that night, and normally we would go back home around 6 in the morning, 6, 7 in the morning, right? That day, I don't remember what time we got back home, but I remember that I woke up around 10 o'clock or something like that, 9:30, 10 o'clock. And I had this feeling that I need to go to a church. Okay, I need to go to a church. So I start dressing up, and she wakes up and says, where are you going? I said, I need to go to church. She says, are you crazy? I said, no, actually, she said, are you stupid? That was the translation, the literal translation she used. Are you stupid? I said, I don't know. I need to go. I need to go. Do you want to come? She
So
says, no.
Kostas, when was the last time you had been in church prior to this?
Yeah. So prior to this, there was a new church that had opened, let's say about 6-7 kilometers away from my house, evangelical church. And there was, my cousin was going to that church, right? And his wife with my girlfriend used to be together in school. So one day my cousin invited us so they can see each other. Our girls could see each other. So I told her, and says, yeah, I want to see her. So we went to that church, and it was Wednesday night, right? Not many people. Wednesday night is more, let's say more friendly. When we got there, I mean, after we got there, we left. We both talked to each other and we said, we'll never come back here. We could feel, we could sense, and I'm not blaming, I don't blame the people there. I'm just saying that we could feel that we weren't good enough for that. The idea would be that you're not good enough to be here. You need to change so you can be inside this place. That was the feeling we both had when we left that church. So we forgot it, right? So several months later, October 2003, 12th of October 2003. I wake up. I know I need to go to a church. So my first thought is not an evangelical church. My first thought is an Orthodox church, because that's closer and that's more Greek. In Greece, you have several Orthodox churches almost everywhere you go. So I start driving and I'm passing churches. I know I need to keep driving. I know. So when I get outside of that church, I know I need to stop. So I stop, but I don't want to go up there, because I have said to God, I'm not going up there again. There's no reason for me to be up there. I have earrings, longer hair. Well, I had hair. Look at that now, right? Yeah, too much of washing. And I was wearing the same clothes I was wearing last night at the bar, just a white T-shirt and jeans, ripped jeans, I think. So I go, I don't want to go up there, but I really feel someone pulling me up. And I open the door and I go up. I walked into that church and I see my cousin and my brother sitting there. I had no idea that my brother was going to that church. No idea. Not only I didn't know that my brother was going to that church, my brother was baptized in that church. I had no idea. With my brother, never had very close relationship. When we were together, we have very good humor. We laugh, but we were never like, friends or really close as, brothers. So it was very interesting for me seeing him there. Both my brother and my cousin look at me like, oh, what's happening? Why these guys here today? So I sit next to them and I'm just trying to hide behind the person in front of me. Okay. I don't want people to notice. I am there because something inside me tells me you need to be here now. That's the only reason I'm there. So there is a preacher from South Africa that day speaks in that church, right? And the Greek guy translates. And his first words were, I had prepared to tell you something today, but God woke me up last night and told me to tell you something different, because some of you here loves you very much. When he said that, I knew he was talking to me. I was hiding. I didn't have eye contact with him. So I was hiding behind the person in front of me, okay, putting my head down and just listening. I knew he was talking to me. Everything on his sermon was about, if you believe in God, do something about it. That was the whole thing. Every example he brought, every scripture, everything, it was like, if you believe, do something about it. And I was considering myself a believer, right? I was considering, I believed in God. I didn't love God. I didn't follow God, but I believed in God. So I believed in all of this. So this guy at the end of his sermon says, I want a guy between 20 and 30 years old that doesn't have a wife and kids to stand up and say that he's ready to give his life to Jesus. That's exactly what I heard, right? So I'm there and I know that this guy is talking to me. I know it. I am in the second or third row at the end, right? About 100 people in the church. So there's many people. It's not like 5 people, So it's about 100 people and I'm hiding. He cannot see me. So he says, I want a man 20 and 30 years old, between 20 and 30 years old. So he's waiting about a minute, couple of minutes. And then a guy stands up from the first row. I knew this guy. I played with him to George's basketball team when I was young, right? I knew him. He was a little bit older than me, but just a little bit older than me. So I knew him, but I thought he was a believer. So I couldn't calculate why he stood up. So anyway, he stands up and the preacher asks him, what's your name? And he says, Dimitris. He says, thank you, Dimitris. I'm waiting for one more. I said, oh, come on. He was saying, I know he's there. I know there's one more there. And I was struggling in my head. I had started shaking. I was trying to hold my tears. I knew he was talking to me, but I didn't want to confess it. And this guy probably was waiting 2 minutes, 3 minutes, silence, 100 people silence. And he was going up and down. And he was saying, I know there is one more. And then the translator would say in Greek, I know there is one more. And then something in me would tell me, you don't need to do it with your body. It's okay if you do it with your heart, with your spirit. And at the same time, a verse came to my mind. It was from Matthew. And it said, everyone who confesses me publicly, I will confess him before my Father in heaven. Everyone who denies me, I will deny him before my Father in heaven. And I was so scared that I jumped up. Literally, I jumped up. And it was like 100 kilos of sin stuck on the chair, and I could fly. I was so free. I felt that if I jump, I will fly. He looked me in the eye. I was crying. And he said to me, what's your name? I said, Kostas. He said, can I come and shake your hand? I said, I don't know. I mean, I didn't say it. I just moved my shoulders. And he came down. He shook my hand and he left. He went up there. Now, all this time, I had a voice recorder with me and I recorded everything. Because when I left home, I knew something big was going to happen. I had no idea what. So I got the voice recorder with me just in case. And that day, after he said that God told me to tell you something different last night, after he said this phrase, I started recording. So I went back home. I ran back home. And I went to my girlfriend and I said, listen. So I put the recording on and 45 minutes more. I listened again, everything. And she listened. At the end of the sermon, I listened literally, actually, what he really said. This guy didn't say, I want a guy to give his life to Jesus. This guy said, I want someone to serve in the Olympic Games of Athens or, in a ministry or something like that, So it was crazy. I heard something completely different, right? So my girlfriend, when she listened to that, she said, so what? I don't get it. So I understood that this day, it was made for me. It was 12 of October 2003 when God came into my reality, right? And said to me, let me show you something else. Let me show you something bigger than that, right? Let me set you free from some things, right? My friends can say that. It was very simple for me to stop the alcohol, the smoking, the drugs. I was so in love with Christ that I didn't want to continue any of that. And it was done. I continued the drugs just for a little bit more, just for one reason, because I was debating with God if it's good or bad, right? I said, come on, this is just normal thing, it just, it's a plant. It doesn't matter, You have blessed it, right? That was my argument with him, but I was seriously with him. I wasn't doing it just to be an anarchist or just to be, but I just wanted to see why it's wrong. And there was a time that I was honest with him and I said to him, if this is wrong, just tell me now and I will finish it. And he told me that moment and I finished. That was the last day.
I love it, Kostas.
Yeah, that's what happened that day. And that's how God got into my reality.
So he's breaking into your reality, and that's supernatural. I mean, you're hearing something through your ears that was not said. God is using someone else's voice, giving you his message to change your life. Now, we know that those kind of breakthroughs, those are landmark moments. They're earthquakes that that mark you forever. And you mentioned this word, anarchist. It's so interesting. When we're talking about freedom, the Lord even let you wrestle with him about drugs. And we know that the Lord's journey for us in freedom is to move towards love, and he's like, hey, the law is done. You're in me now. I've paid for that. But now I'm going to teach you how to love.
Yes.
When I heard your story, Kostas, I was shocked by these moments where God spoke to you in a language that you could understand. And I think that that's so important for all of us. But you still had a looming court case. Can you talk to us about how he spoke to you at that time?
Oh, yeah. So 2003, my life changes and I say, okay, I'm going to follow Christ. Now, in my mind, I had forgot the court, right? But it was coming. So I think it was either January or February 2004. So a paper came to my house and I got scared. Fear came into me. And I tried not to show it to anyone. Nobody knew it. Only my parents knew it. So it was one day we drove together with my dad to the court. Probably was the only day that my dad closed his shop. He was never sick in his life and he would never close his shop for any reason. It was probably the only day he closed his shop and we drove together. We got there, we saw the paper outside the door and there was 9 different trials that day. The 2 first trials were for something different, but the 7 other trials were all for drugs, right? And mine was the last one. So I go, in my mind, I say, okay, I'm going to go inside, see what's happening. So I'll be ready, right? Emotionally, I'll be ready. So I go in, and when they finish the 2 first trials, they start doing the trials for the drugs. In one case were 3 people, in another case 4, in another case 2. It's possible that the only case that I was alone, it was mine. So in the first trial, the persecutor just starts, and he's so mean to the guy in front of him. So mean that I already had some fear in my heart, right? But then when I saw him, I was terrified. I said, oh, I cannot do that. I need to go out. So I'm going to go out, keep calm and pray until my time comes. And brother, in that ear, I hear a voice. Not in this one, here. It's a whisper and tells me, look what will happen to them because they don't have me. That's exactly what he said. And for some reason, I got a little bit of peace in my heart. And I calmed down a little bit. So everything finishes and then my time comes. And I walk that alley there and the judge calls my name and says, do you know why here? I said, yes. He reads why I'm there, all the accusations, and he reads the laws that forbids everything. And then he looks me in the eye and says, why did you do it? And I said, I don't know. I was curious. All this time I was praying that he will not ask me details about the drugs, about where it come from or anything. And I was praying to God that he will not do that because I would have to give up my friends or I would have to lie, right? And that was a line that I didn't know what to do. So he looks me in the eye and says, why did you do it? And I said, I don't know, curiosity, And he says to me, like the singer says, let me do the wrong thing. Don't tell me what is right. And I, moved again my shoulder and I said, yes, probably. And he turns to the persecutor and says, the guy is yours. So he stands up, the persecutor, and I'm ready. I don't know what to expect, but I'm ready that he's gonna, if he had something, he would hit me. But he stands up and he says, he looks at me, and then he looks at the judge, and he says, I agree with the singer. Let the guy go. And the judge, he's so surprised. He cannot believe that. He says, what? Wait, what? He says, I agree with the singer. Just let him go. And he's so surprised, he takes a pause for several seconds. And then he takes his folders, talk to the people next to him, right and left. And he looks at me and he says, Costa, you are found guilty, but unpunished. Go and don't do it again. And I was trying to hold my tears. Even now, I'm trying to hold my tears, man. It was so crazy. I walked down the alley. My father just came. We walked out. We never talked again about it. Never.
Wow, Kostas.
That was crazy.
Amazing. Amazing. You were found guilty but unpunished. And guys, if that's not grace, I don't know what is.
Yes.
You're alive in Christ. You're seeing the Lord intervening. Your movement in your life is towards love and faith. And I'm gonna shift because I think a lot of guys can relate to this next part of your journey, Kostas, is many of us start in that place. The Apostle Paul of the Church of Galatians, he said, here's how you started, with that revelation of freedom from the law and that grace. And then he says, and now you slip back into something. And the difference between trusting and trying. And I know, talk to us about this, because this is super important that in our journey of freedom, it's not like free once and then free forever. It's we've tasted freedom, we've been set free, and now you want to please the Lord. But describe to us what happens over these next legs of your journey as you're trying to seek God.
Yes. Yeah. At the summer of 2004, a very big, excuse my pronunciation, I hope I'll say it right, a big ship, big ferry, a
Yes.
boat, a huge
Yes.
boat, right? Yeah. It's a huge Christian library, comes to Greece by OM. And the name was Doulos, which means servant. Man, at that point, I'm on fire, okay? I want to go out and preach. I want to go out and share the gospel with people, I don't even know the Bible yet. I mean, I don't even know, I haven't read all the gospels yet, but I still want to go out and serve. And when I see that boat, I said, yes, this is the thing. That's what I want to do. So I go back to the church that God changed my life, and I'm attending that church right now. I mean, that time. So I'm attending that church, and I go to the pastor, and I said, man, I think, I would love to go to that, So I asked for help from the church, because you have to pay like some money to be on the ferry. It's like a ministry. So, and he said, no. You shouldn't do that. You should go first to the Bible college, then become then help me with a youth group, then become a youth pastor, then you're gonna help me with a pastor idea, and then you're gonna become a pastor. And I said, no, man, I just want to go. Just kick me out. I want to go. That's what I want. He says, no. So later on, a couple of elders and people that I respect and I love, even today, they told me, no, it's good if you go to the Bible college. It's good if you go there, and they were willing to pay for my finances there. And so I said, okay, they are older in faith, they're older in life. I love them. I respect them. I will listen to them. And I did it. And I learned many things in the Bible college. It was amazing how my mind opened and my spirit opened to different things that I would never experience before. But at the same time, I didn't have correct guidance as a man. So I still, after the in-love part, when the difficulties come, it's very difficult to, it's hard when you want to survive through these difficulties. So after you lose your first love, even if it's with God, then you go back where you think you are safe. And for several years, I was selfish. I was correct. No one else. So for several years, that's what I was. for a small amount of time, I believed in God and I saw Him, I followed Him, but then without the right guidance, I slipped again back, to where I was in the beginning. And I was a Christian at that point, but I started making really, really bad choices, right? So even going to the Bible college, I found a good lady, and we got married. And it was a cultural thing mostly, Uh, since I got baptized, I got saved, not baptized. Since I got saved, then I should get married, and then had family, and then that's the line. That's you when you connect that dot, then you have to follow these dots. That's what the culture said. So, and I followed that. I followed it, leading a youth group for a couple of years. But I wasn't growing in spirit. I didn't have other men to correct me, and the problem was I wouldn't let other people to correct me.
Oh man,
That was
Kostas.
really, yeah, that was
You know,
really hard for me.
I think Kostas, a lot of men can relate exactly what you're saying. Where
Yeah.
on one they started on the in the ditch on the right side of the road, and then they have an experience with Jesus, gets them on the road, and they got that first love, and suddenly they fall off on the left side of the road on trying to prove themselves and trying to earn, and they
Mhm.
end up they were a loner on the right side of the road, and now they're a loner on the left side of the road. In both places, they find themselves in bondage. They found themselves bound. And how did you get back into freedom, man? How did you get to that point of regaining your
Yeah.
first love?
Okay. Before we get to that, it will make more sense if I say a couple of more things. Um, I got married, and then we had a child, and let's see, he's today 16 years old, right? So 2008, my daughter gets born, and this is probably the best time of my life. 2 years later, my father dies, and it was something that even if I had thought about it, I couldn't comprehend it. And you know what was the worst thing that I could tell from all this situation? Yes, I missed him. Yes, everything. Yes, but the worst thing that I still carried every day, not as a guilt, but as a reminder, I never said to my father, I love him. Never in my life. I don't remember myself saying to my dad that I love him. And it was the person that I loved most than anyone else until my daughter was born. So I keep carrying that every day. Not as a guilt, again, I say, but as a reminder that when you love someone, shut up and show it to this person. Tell him, tell him or tell her you love her. Do it. Make them believe, make them understand that you love them, right? Because the time goes like this, or something happens. Because my dad had nothing as a health issue, just his heart stopped, and that's it. So my father dies 2010, and from that time, depression comes back again, really hard. And my ex-wife, we got divorced at the end of 2012, and my ex-wife couldn't help me with that. It was something that I was going 100% alone. I was trying to, I don't know even if I was trying to deal with it. I think after a moment, I quit dealing with that. And that was really hard for me that time. I was in a very deep depression, right? And that started causing issues in the family. Then anger starting came out. So a lot of arguments in the house, but in a bad way. Um, I didn't understand it at that time, but I know I was completely lost. I lost my path. I lost my hope. Had lost everything, and that the trigger was when that my dad died, but that wasn't the cause. The cause it was that I was still bounded to my old self and never allowed anyone from outside to come in and help me out with it. You know, Even George and Marty, that I knew them, I would share with them what I wanted to share, not everything. So they wouldn't know the whole truth, ever. So if someone doesn't know the whole truth, cannot help you 100%.
Oh, dude. Yes, I mean, Jesus said it. He said, "He whom the Son has set free is
Yes.
free indeed." And he's talking about living in the truth and walking in the truth.
Yes.
So what gets you to that place of now you find yourself, you're back in depression and
Yes.
you've entering into a divorce and you're really
Yes.
struggling. What's the next step?
Yeah, well, 2012, end of 2012, getting the divorce. It was just a little bit, maybe a couple of days, a few days before Christmas, that my daughter and my ex-wife left home. Again, my mind cannot comprehend that my daughter is not going to be home anymore. That's the worst thing that could happen to me. I just don't get it. I am in the house with echo now because everything is gone. And I am alone, cold. I don't even have bed. Even the bed is out. So I am sleeping in a couch and I'm starting fighting with God, complaining to God. God, why you let me do that? Why you allowed me to go there? Why you brought me this person? Why? Complaining. I was complaining for about 2 years or more. Every day, every single day. I never stopped saying, I never said I don't believe in God. Because I cannot say that. Obviously, you can tell that I heard his voice. Things happen to myself. I cannot deny that. So for me, my reality is that I'm standing in front of a person and fighting with him, complaining, It's like, in a way, complaining to my father, right? Why you didn't do that? Why you allowed me? Why? So getting through that, I also lose my job, and that makes it even worse. For 11 months, I cannot find a job. 11 months. In 11 months, I lost 25 kilos because I didn't have food. My parents, my mother and my brother, we live in the same building, but they couldn't see my problem. Let's say that, okay? They couldn't see what I was going through. So by the end of that 11 months, just a little bit before the summer of 2014, I started work in a supermarket and doing delivery for them, the shopping. And in October of that year, I see in the shop next door a beautiful lady. Now, imagine I'm still complaining to God about everything, right? And I have promised and swear to myself I will never be with a woman again. I will never be anything close to having a relationship again. Literally the words that were coming out of my mouth. Even if you, God, come down and tell me, I will not do it. I was so complaining and against that whole idea. I was very traumatized. Okay. Inside of me, I was bleeding and the wound was still open. So I see her. And when I see her, I say, oh, wow, I couldn't believe that I could feel for a person like that. I had girlfriends before. I've met people that I said, oh, wow, she's beautiful, and I'm in love with her. But what I felt for her, it was something completely different. I asked her out. We started dating. One night, we're just sharing our stories. She shares her story about her life. And the whole idea was that she didn't believe in God and she believed in a high power, because makes sense that there is something like a high power, but cannot be the Christian God that we already know, because she has only met Orthodox people. So, when you live into the system, it's very difficult to see the values behind the system. So that was the reason she couldn't believe in the Orthodox or Christian God. But she said, I believe there's higher power, And she had found different ways to reach that higher power. And when she finished her story, sharing that, she says to me, "So when did you stop believing in God?" And I said, "Oh God, I messed up. That was the time that something in my mind, my brain, clicked and said, you weird guy, nothing inside or outside of you points to God anymore. She sees you and sees a person who doesn't believe in God, and you're fighting with God every day. You believe in God and you're fighting with him." So I said, "Oh, I messed up." That was literally the words I used. "Oh, I messed up," in Greek though. And I said to her, "Let me explain." So I told her all my story from the beginning. I said, I shared everything. And I shared everything, and I said to her, "You know what? And the last few years, I just complained. And I promised to God that moment, I promised to God, I will never complain again. So I will only just give thanks to him." And that was the only thing I changed. I didn't say I'm going to start reading my Bible, I'm going to start doing that. No, no, no. The only thing I changed at that point, I promised to God, I will not complain again. I will only give you thanks. So I saw the world with different perspective. And literally, I would complain to him every day why I see my daughter only once every 14 days. And then I took that and put it in the other side, and I said, thank you that I can see my daughter once every 14 days. That day, when she asked me, when did you stop believing in God? And I was again like, oh, I messed up again. So from that time until today, I promise you I don't complain. I say
Man,
thanks.
I love it. I love it. God has continued to give you these little one-liners that are
Yes.
breaking through to your heart, and suddenly you're walking in thanksgiving after
Yes.
years of agony and complaint and fighting with God, and suddenly you found a new level of freedom.
Yes.
And you're falling and you're falling in love with the Lord again, and, at the same time, you're falling in love with this woman.
Oh yeah. We fall in love with you together, and I start praying to God. I said, if she's not from you, I can finish it any time you want. But during our time together, she would ask me questions about God, because I told her I've been to Bible college, I've studied the Bible, I believe in. So she would have questions, and there was a time that I had to choose not to be me anymore. So what I would do, I wouldn't answer to her. I would say, let's see what the Bible says about it. So I would open the Bible. I stopped answering because I knew the answers, but that never led me to anything. So now I understand that to lead someone to Christ is to point, not to tell him. That thing I didn't know before, but that's what we need to do. Point. And our life needs to point to Jesus. That's
Oh,
what it
man.
is.
And the Gospels are so clear. That's what it means to be a friend. That's what it
Yes.
means to walk in freedom. You were giving
Yes.
her freedom. And where did that lead to in her life?
Well, a few months later, she accepted Christ. Um, she literally says that I'm not the reason she believes, but God used me. Through me, they met. She met Jesus.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah. So, fast forward. Now we are together. We're expecting our third child. And in a few days, we're expecting our next child. In a few days,
Ah,
God
and
has blessed us. Yeah, it's I don't know what to say about it. I mean, I remember myself uh, dying inside, you know, being against God, fighting Him. You know, I couldn't see hope. It was everything about
mm,
darkness. I was bound
ah,
again to my mind, to what I thought it was reality. And then God sends another angel and says, you know what? There is a different reality, and it's not about being with a woman. It's about, because even if he had told me, you need to stop being with this woman, I would say, okay. Because for me, the most important is to be complete in him, to go with him. So for me and my wife now, this is the promise that we have given to each other. And it's, I have to be okay with God, and she has to be okay with God, because there's no other way that we can be together good with God. There's no way. So we're really fighting for that every day. And of course, we've been through ups and downs and fights and disappointments and arguments. But whenever we go back to ourselves and, I try to be selfish, she try to be selfish, we have tried hard through prayer and living with God to have the default situation that we both need to go back to God. Okay. And it's not about us anymore. So if I'm right or if I'm wrong, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If she's right or if she's wrong, it doesn't matter. And we have accepted that. When the tension comes, and I know that this is important, when the tension comes, you have to sit down and see what is important. And important is to love your spouse, to love your friend, and to do it with a love that only God can give, right? So we're trying to have this default situation in our hearts.
I love it, man. I love it, Kostas. And man, thank you for sharing. As we wrap up our time, it's an amazing picture in my mind, hearing the story of your life and then hearing you say, I've started a coffee shop and it's called Dry Bones Coffee, and seeing that
Yes.
picture of the Dry Bones Cafe.
Yes.
And I'm looking, I was like, who calls who calls this that, except for, I know that scripture, man.
Yes.
I know Ezekiel 37,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, that's Kostas' story. Can you give us the vision behind what you're doing?
Well, I have helped several times with other ministries or as a volunteer with people that have issues with addictions. But also I have helped in ministries with people that they're coming from war zones, like Syria, Afghanistan. So I had to serve people, and what I figured is that we are all in the desert, right? And we are all dried bones. Even if we don't believe that, we are. So I think God has given me the platform through this coffee shop right now to reach out to people and in their desert, in their dried from hope life, to come there and tell them that, guys, there is life. There is still hope, even if everything it's the end of everything, right? I believe there is life. And the reason I use this name is that exactly. It's not a catchy name for a coffee shop, but it's a catchy name for the gospel. And every person who has been to the coffee shop has asked me, why you do that? And I explain, because I believe that we are all going sometimes through our desert. And in that desert, we lose our hope. And I believe that God can bring that hope back. And please listen to me. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about the person God. That God that raised Jesus from the dead, right? That person that can give life to your hopeless times, can bring back to life everything that has to be back to life.
Kostas, I want you to speak to our king and guys now. Many of us have been through those places, fallen in the ditch on the right side of debauchery and sin, and then fallen in the ditch on the left side of religion and trying to prove and strive. And we get stuck being afraid of freedom. We fear the very freedom that God would give us because we're afraid of screwing up, and we would like the control of being dry bones laying in a desert, or we like the control of being stuck in a prison cell, and God saying, come out and trust me. I'll speak to you. And just listen, trust that my spirit's really in you, that I really am for you. Um, I think a lot of us are there, and we need you to just pass on that breath of life. Can you do that for us and just pray over us, speak to us, whatever you got on your heart to set us free? Walk in the Spirit today.
Yeah. So just I wanna share something that follows me. The last 2 years follows me in this verse. If that's okay with you guys, please listen to that because it's very important. And it is from Psalm 116. Give me a second, because if I read it in Greek, most of you will not understand. So it's from Psalm 116, verses 7, 8, and 9. Return, O my soul, to your rest, for the Lord has dealt bountifully with you. For you have delivered my soul from death, my eyes from tears, my feet from stumbling. I will walk before the Lord in the land of the living. Now, everyone who listens to that podcast today, please close your eyes and listen to that. Return, O my soul, to your rest, for the Lord has dealt bountifully with you. Father God, we love you. We thank you. You are an amazing Father. But many times we cannot see that you are a Father. We see you only as a God, only as a powerful creature, only as a powerful being. We see you only as all the other things, and we forget to see you as a Father. Sometimes the problem is our fathers. Sometimes the problem is that we as fathers, we are not good enough. We are a bad image of a father. Father, please show us your heart. I'm praying that you will open our eyes, our spirits. Please help us understand your heart. Please help us to become your sons. Please help us to see all these things that you have already told us in the scripture, in spirit. Please open our hearts, open our souls to see who you are and why you are this person. Father, I bring in front of you all the people that are listening now and the people that are going to listen later. Please, God, speak to them through your words, like you did to me. It doesn't matter what my words are saying, but please, you use the words, how these people need to listen to these words. Thank you so much for the platform, for the opportunity. Thank you so much for our friends and brothers. Thank you for, as a son, I have so many brothers under you, Father. Thank you for the other sons that are around me, helping me to become the father you want me to be. Please make that bound bigger. I want to be more bound with my brothers, and I want to be a better father for my kids and for other people that look up to me. I love you, God, and there's no enough words in Greek or English dictionary to say how much I thank you. In your name I pray.
Amen. Praise the Lord. God, I just agree with that. And guys, when Kostas said, just that prayer of really resting in what it means to be sons, that's freedom. That is what it is. It's hearing that over you, that you are a beloved son of the living God who is a good father. And hope you guys, treasure that and find freedom. And if you need help, if you realize you're still struggling with any kind of bondage, whether it be, the obvious sin stuff or the religious stuff, and you're paralyzed by fear, not able to move forward, haven't learned how to walk in the Spirit yet, please let us know, so we can have somebody that can just talk with you, and love to do that. Continue to connect, guys, on the website at canyonpathways.com, or look us up on our Monday calls, or continue to plug in with the other opportunities on the podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Kostas, thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you so much.
Friends, hope you enjoyed that convo between Luke and Kostas as much as I did. Just so many incredible gems between the two of those guys. And Kostas, in his journey, has embodied certain aspects of this journey into sonship that has continued to enrich Canyon Pathways community around the world. Check out the show notes for links, as well as a PDF with reflection questions if you'd like to use this episode for personal reflection or in small group meetings. That's a great tool. Subscribe so you catch all the episodes as we continue to develop a language of sonship through this podcast. Thanks to the team at Maroon Harpoon for producing this episode, and to our donors who make this venture possible. And as always, thank you for being a part of the Canyon Pathways community as we together live like sons and lead like fathers.